All right. To finish off the stream, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to actually go through AM4. I'm going to do a motherboard roundup. Inspired by Tag for sure. I would say that the socket that I know the most about is AM4, so I'm doing that first, but I'll do AM3, AM3 Plus, FM1, FM2 as well, and then maybe AM1 and some stuff like that. But um, on the AMD side, Tag has already done 939, and he'd probably do 754. So I don't think I'll go as old as that, but maybe AM2 Plus as well. Um, yeah, exactly. Let's go. And I'm going to cut this down for the YouTubes. So AM4, what is it? It's actually the current generation of AMD platforms. So a little bit of like just basic knowledge, basic understanding for those who don't know. The number tends to stand for the DDR generation. So there was AM2, which is DDR2, AM3, which was DDR3, and AM4, which is the current generation, which is DDR4. And there's going to be an AM5, which will be a DDR5 exclusive socket. Previous to AM4, actually AMD had like separate sockets for APUs and regular CPUs. So there was the FM lineup, FM1, 2, 2 plus, and then the AM 2, 2 plus, 3, 3 plus. But AM4 sort of represented the merger of both lineups. So it's both APUs and regular CPUs work inside of AM4, and it's been around since, I guess, for the really early stuff, the end of 2016. And it's obviously been a really long-lived platform. We have one more sort of half generation to come, which is Zen 3 3D or Zen 3 Plus. I don't know what they're really calling it, but basically it's Ryzen 5000 3D with the 3D stacked cache, which I have here in my little table. But basically for regular CPUs, this is kind of where we're at. I don't know, like the partial compatibility, I know there's BIOS modding that goes on, but in general, I would claim that the 300 series, so we've basically had three families of chipsets on this socket: the 300 series, the 400 series, and the 500 series. The 300 series came out together with just the beginning of the platform and sort of tends to have good support all the way through the Ryzen 3000. The 400 series was released together with Ryzen 2000, but also kind of has good support all the way across. The 500 series was debuted together with the 3000 series, but it doesn't, there's all sorts of like marketing reasons and bias size limitation reasons and just like lack of time and bias programmer reasons why the 500 series is probably not the right way to go for older stuff like Ryzen 1000. Oftentimes it's just flat out incompatible. So I think on the X570, like a gigabyte board, I tried the 1000 series and it wouldn't post. I know sometimes something is not in the supported CPU list, but it still posts and still works fine. But yeah, and yeah, just to sort of give an idea that like Bristol Ridge was the first generation, and that was 28 nanometers. So actually the same process and the same architecture as the last AM3 Plus CPUs and the last FM2 Plus CPUs, just sort of transplanted into the new socket to sort of like trial run the new socket, but on DDR4 obviously, which is kind of weird having an old architecture sort of with a new IMC. Not really that benching relevant, but I still listed off here just sort of for completeness sake. And then Ryzen 1000 was the sort of proper Zen, as we call it, 14 nanometer proper release of the new architecture, all the way up to 8 cores. 1800X was the top model there. Ryzen 2000 went all the way up to 2700X, again 8 cores, but it's Zen Plus, so it's like a in the Intel sort of lingo would be a TOC, you know, in the tick-tock cadence. So it's like a process, it's an improvement of the existing architecture, but it's on a new process. So 12 nanometer global foundries instead of 14 nanometer global foundries. And I would argue the best to overclock, because it's got no cold bug. So Ryzen 1000 series is tricky because it has sort of like an IMC cold bug type thing where the IMC degrades and slowly comes back towards full pot, but it's not as good at full pot in terms of RAM megahertz as it is, let's say, on ambient. So that's a bit tricky. I like the 1000 series, but it's not for everyone. 2000 series is the most beginner friendly XOC generation of Ryzen, I would say. 3000 series, you have the added complication you have, that is Zen 2, so it's a totally new microarchitecture, and it's a new process as well, so it's TSMC 7 nanometers, but the IO die is on an old process. I think it's on 12, Global Foundries 12 or something like that. So you have like an Infinity Fabric / IMC cold bug, and similar on the 5000 series, which is Zen, sorry, 3000 series is Zen 2, 5000 series is Zen 3, but it's still on the 7 nanometer TSMC. On the APU side, it's even more messy. Here's like a rough approximation of how it all shakes out. Basically, the sort of summary would be, if you wanted a board that's compatible with pretty much everything, it would be something like a B550 Master, but that's skipping ahead a bit. But just to say that this naming scheme is a little bit out of step. So the Zen 1 non-APUs, so chips without an iGPU, are 1000 series, whereas the Zen 1 APUs are 2000 series. So it was always one behind, but then they decided to make the 4000 series APUs OEM only, and then 5000 APUs are actually on the same Zen 3 architecture as the 5000 non-APUs. Okay, anyway, what boards are good or bad, indifferent? I really love the Crosshair 6. I think for 1000 series, Ryzen is still the way to go. There's a few things that got better with the Crosshair 7, like they changed the memory topology. So for chips that can really actually take advantage of it, which 1000 series can't, you get higher mem clocks and maybe tighter as well. Then they added a PS2 port. There's a few little drawbacks, like for some reason Asus, it might be like patent related or something, they decided never to go dual BIOS anymore on AMD. So that's a shame. So the BIOS chip is there's neither a second BIOS chip nor is there a socketed BIOS chip. So there's a few little niggles like that. I do miss the PS2, but otherwise great board. Yeah, I'm looking forward to benching mine again with the new point system. And you've got your, you've got your slow mode, you've got your LN2 mode, you've got your retry switch, safe boot, everything you need, postcode display, great board. In the 300 series, that was the beginning of, let's say, benching relevant AMD for, the current generation of benchers, really. And because previous to that was a long time ago. So there really aren't that many other good boards. I just want to mention, as a dishonorable mention, the Extreme. It sort of looks like a Hero, just it's EATX, and it's called Extreme instead of Hero. And you'd think that maybe if you can find one cheap or something, it could be a good alternative. Just don't. I tried benching on it. The BIOS support isn't as good as on the Hero, and you can't, as to my knowledge, cross flash. I tried to run this on cold, and it had a cold bug at like -120 or something. And it's got all sorts of weirdness, like it has an RSVD switch up here, but it's not implemented. And yeah, it's just sort of awkward. It's like bigger and it's still the same as the other boards, and it tends to be more expensive because people who buy it as collectors or for dailies think they, it obviously had a higher MSRP. But yeah. Oh, the other thing I didn't mention was, maybe you can sort of make it out here, maybe not, because actually the retention mechanism changed from AM3 to AM4. The Hero, and I guess the Extreme as well, have AM3 holes, which is really nice if you have an old kingpin heater, or just even an old air cooler or an old pot that has only AM3 holes. So that was pretty nice. Otherwise, 300 series, it's pretty slim pickings. I mean, there's some cold results on the gaming K7. I tried to run it cold for a 5 gigahertz clock limited gigabyte competition, and I got nowhere. It has all kinds of cold bugs. Basically, it has this weird cold bug that a lot of boards have that are not cold optimized, where you have to like stay below a certain temperature to boot into OS, and then like apply voltages in OS, and then maybe get full pot that way. But then if you crash, you have to torch all the way down again. It is a good looking board. It has all the sort of prerequisites, I suppose, of a good benching board. It has your post display down here and some buttons that I don't know what they do, but yeah, at a push, I mean, if you really can't find a hero, which 5 years after release I would think it would be cheap enough, but this would be sort of an worth a go. But I don't know how it'll go. I mean, it's worth mentioning in general that with all of the evolutions on AM4, with all the new G-sets and stuff, it's often worthwhile running a really old BIOS actually to get, especially if you're trying to run like 1000 series. Don't make the mistake of flashing to the latest BIOS on something like a Crosshair 6 Hero, because that might screw you on cold bugs and stuff. So, and I would say the similar thing would apply to other boards. There's also some cold results on the BioStar. I don't know enough about the board, but you know, again, the same thing. You've got your buttons, you've got switches here. I don't know what they do. You've even got dual BIOS, it looks like here, and they sort of look socketed, and you've got your post display. And I think it has PS2 again as well. So yeah, if BioStar never seems to be a really big thing in markets outside of Asia, but if you can find one, it's worth a shot. It's definitely a nice looking board. But that's kind of it for the 300 series. But the good news is you can pretty much, I think for the unlocked 1000 series chips, a Hero 7 will do. So if you're sort of looking for a board that will cover all of the non-APUs for all of AM4, this board has 5000 series support. And I ran 5000 series for Pipe Crime in Country Cup, and it legit clocked FCLK well. So again, you've only got your single BIOS and stuff, but yeah, I think this would be the way to go for it if you just wanted one board and you wanted to run all generations of Ryzen. I think you can't go wrong here. I don't know what the used market is like these days, but I feel like, yeah, so you've got your daisy, they changed from T to daisy chain topology, and you've got your PS2, which is nice for, you know, getting Win 7 working easily and stuff. Not a massive fan of this relocation of the buttons from the bottom to the top, but okay. It seems it's weird seeing it with the heatsink on. Actually, mine doesn't have a heatsink on it. What else is there? People run this. Same sort of caveats as with the 300 series gigabyte. I mean, in general, the AMD BIOS and software utility support on the AM4 platform by Gigabyte has not been great. So there have been versions of GTL floating around, and there have been XOC BIOSes floating around. But good luck, for example, getting a BIOS and a GTL version for this board for the 5000 series, for example. So yeah, proceed with caution. It's definitely got the prerequisites, but yeah, I just don't know. I don't know how. Again, I can't speak for every single market in the world, but you know, is this board really so much cheaper than a Crosshair 7 to be worth it? Actually, they did not make an Extreme this generation. They skipped it because I can imagine this Extreme 6 having terrible sales because it just had an awful RRP, really high. But just to mention that the Strixes of this generation, the B450, I don't know if there was an X450, 470 Strix. They're known to have bad memory OC. I owned one of these for a little while just to do iGPU clocking. You've got no buttons, you've got no post display. I don't know, if you're tempted into one of these, probably it's a no. Yeah, it's really ASUS heavy. I'm sorry, but it's going to change now with the 500 series. So 500 series released at the same time as the 3000 Ryzens, and that's when the core count was increased, and you had not only 4, 6, and 8 cores, but also 12 cores and 16 cores. And Intel at the time didn't really have a response for those core counts, so this is when other manufacturers got into the game. But we'll still start with ASUS. This board, the board I was using, died unfortunately, but yes, they made an impact. Can I zoom in? Yes. So 2 DIMMs. It does feel like it helps with RAM OC, but probably not as much as you would imagine. Not as much as it does on Intel, from what I can tell. But really nice board. Obviously, the caveat is, you've only got 1 GPU slot, so you're limited in 3D benching. You also sort of have to contend with tight spacing around the socket if you're trying to run like cold RAM and stuff, but that can all be overcome. You've got your post display in the I/O, so if you flip your bench rig to face you, it's actually perfect. Even when you're like sitting down, you can just see the post codes just straight in your face, and actually your like retry button is in the I/O as well, so that's really nice. Got a slow mode. I think the reset button, sorry, the retry is down here. Safe boot. The only thing is the LN2 jumper is right here, so you don't have an iGPU out, so you'll always be running a display out card here, which makes it tricky on cold. If you want to flip back and forth the LN2 jumper, you kind of have to pull your GPU, so that's not great. But otherwise, nice little board. I don't know what the user market is like. Maybe it's a little bit pricey, but yeah, if you can get it, it's nice. There was also a Hero version. PS2 was gone again for some reason. I don't know why you'd want this over the Impact. I'd imagine it's a more expensive board. I suppose if you need the 2 8x slots for dual GPU action, but otherwise not so much to say about this. It's obviously been sort of outclassed by the Impact. And then they did a refresh. Not every manufacturer did a refresh for the 5000 series, but ASUS did choose to do one. I think the PS2 has dropped again. I do have this board. I almost sort of regret buying it. I don't know how good Ryzen 3D is going to be, but yeah, I would imagine the Dark Hero nowadays, not a massive price difference between that and just a regular Hero 8. So maybe the one to get because of better, like there's a proper thread up. The 8 has a thread up on HiRobot forums as well, but if it's like the difference of like $50, I'd probably go for this. But we do have a dishonorable mention as well, which is the Formula. For some reason, and there's actually a second dishonorable mention. Sorry, there's an Extreme and there's a Formula. So they made 4 SKUs for this release. They made a Formula, a Hero, an Impact, and an Extreme. And there's 2 good ones and 2 bad ones. And there was a refresh. So actually there's 5 ASUS titled ROG boards, RSG boards basically. And the Formula has an inbuilt like VRM cooling, and otherwise everything's the same. And I think the postcode display is funky. It's like down here built into this weird shield here and stuff. Not a good benching board, and like hundreds of dollars more expensive just because of this motherboard block. And obviously something similar going on with the Extreme. Not much to talk about here. It's basically I don't even know what the difference. Whatever about the Formula being a total waste of money. The Extreme is an even bigger waste of money because it's like the same drawbacks as the Formula, but more expensive. Yes. So now other manufacturers. MSI joined the party big time. There is a regular X570 Unify, which is the 4-dimmer. I thought there was a postcode display on here. Yes, down here. So buttons and postcodes down here. I can't see anything wrong with this board. Let me know in the, it even has dual 8-pins. Let me know in the comments or in chat right now if you've heard of something going wrong here, but you have the NOS tools, you know, you have everything you need in a benching board, except, you know, if you want to run 1st and 2nd gen, maybe it gets a bit dicey, but 3rd and 5th gen for sure. This is a really, really strong choice, and probably a little bit cheaper, at least on the new market, than the Asus stuff, as it tends to happen. And honorable mention to the Ace as well. Pretty much a lot of MSI boards got tooling and got like XOC support this gen. Don't really know what the difference is. Maybe just price and styling. But yeah, the Ace should be a competent board as well. And the Godlike pretty much looks like the Ace to me. Oh, actually, maybe this is just the wrong picture. Sorry about that. Let's look up a Godlike. Sorry, guys. Yeah. Not the Tomahawk. Yeah, so this has a dragon here and a postcode down here. Yes, I accept. Is the postcode like built in somewhere? I can't see the postcode, but you can tell that it's a different board, right? But basically it's the same thing. It just has like 10G LAN and stuff. So yeah, that would be a dishonorable mention just because it's too expensive. And the same with the Aqua. So this is the generation that like Spave and those ASRock benchers started benching, and they did it on the Aqua, which is fine. I mean, if you get a dispensable board, fine, but this has a monoblock on it and it's just ridiculously expensive. You just don't need that. Like something like an MSI Ace, an MSI just Unify is great. And yeah, that's it. So same thing again, like I mentioned with the X470, maybe an Aorus Master will work fine for you. You even have read points up here, which is kind of cool. But just there, I have those tooling concerns. It's not as readily available as the MSI and Asus tooling, Turbo V and so on. Asus, you can use the Intel Turbo V anyway. So we've gone through those. B550, I've broken it out here, but it's much of a muchness. People keep talking about how B550 is better at memory OC. I don't know. I think that's sort of overblown. It's certainly better at BCLK OC. So if you, for whatever reason, you need BCLK OC, then go for B550, but I don't see it. So I've used the Master, died at Country Cup, unfortunately. So interesting combination in the sense that there's a postcode, but there's no button. So you'll have to use a screwdriver or whatever, connect one of these things to get your button. But yeah, otherwise, this will work fine. And it's actually one of the only boards that claim support of every APU generation and of every you know, regular CPU generation. So if you want just a really good all-round board, because that's the one drawback of the Heroes, the Asus Heroes, is that they'll support the regular CPUs only, not the APUs. I mean, they'll support the APUs, but only for 2D overclocking because they don't have display out. What else have we got here? So there's a Unify X, which is like the real sort of XOC board with with only 2 mem slots, and this has the potential of being a really good all-around board because it has strong APU results up, and it even has memory valids up. So that's nice. Just depends on what kind of bencher you are, whether you want to pay the extra of getting a Unify X because it's obviously going to cost more than an Ace, or just a regular Unify, but otherwise like sweet looking board, and the results speak for themselves. So in terms of memory valid, for a little while there, AMD was the best memory valid platform, and there all of the top results are on the Unify X or the other honorable mention, which is the Strix I. So the ITX dual DIMM Strix. Yeah, you don't have postcode, you don't have power, but just so good at memory OC and APU OC. Oh, and there's actually even the non-X Unify I mentioned above is the X570, and here is the actual B550 4 dimmer. So just don't really know what the difference would be between these two boards. And that's it. And hopefully Hybrid is back. Otherwise, I might have to look this up on UAT. Yes, let's go on UAT. Just gonna have a quick look at all the AM4 boards in case I forgot something major, but I think that's a pretty comprehensive look through all of the boards. I mean, ASRock, there's so many boards here, but like ASRock, this is all just totally benching irrelevant. I think I had a Fatality ITX at one point. Garbage. I was trying to use it just for iGPU, even that was garbage. Not sure about these B5 450 boards. It really only starts getting good with ASRock. I mean, even the Master, I mean, could an argument be made for a Tai Chi? I don't know. I've heard of so many Tai Chis dying. Yeah, I don't see anything that really stands out there. For Country Cup, I think an X570 or a B550 Tai Chi, I don't know which exists. Yeah, at a push, maybe that'll get you somewhere, but probably not on cold. Yeah, X570 Tai Chi, similar. Where's the Aqua? Is it even listed? Yeah, here we go. I mean, there's some subs on it, but it's such an expensive board. Asus, we spent a lot of time on this, but the Strixes I would avoid. The Primes, yeah, I don't know. Strix I, that's the only one. And then even Primes, I mean, just stick with the crosshairs. I mean, unless someone tells me that they've gone through the roof in the used market, I think the crosshairs are the way to go. Ooh, there was a Strix I X570. I didn't know that, but everyone runs a B550. I think that's the one to go with. Anything racing on BioStar, at least you could take a gamble on it, but I don't know. Colorful, I didn't even know they made boards. 0 submissions, that says a lot. How could I forget? Really, really late entry. X570 Dark. But did it ever go retail? I mean, any dark board should be in contention, but I don't know. I don't know if it ever went retail, to be honest. I mean, if you can get one on the secondary market, it's a nice looking board. There's an Adantec review, right? Let's at least look at the PCB. That's nice. Those 90-degree flipped DIMMs and power connectors as well, and then that second display for the core temp. I mean, it's a nice looking board, but I never saw it retail anywhere, so I can't really take that seriously. Gigabyte, obviously 300 series, everything's totally out of the question. Yeah, I think that's it, guys. Let me know. I mean, some of the Tomahawks were okay, but you, especially on first and second gen, you just need the cold volts. I don't think there's any way around that really, otherwise you won't get full pots. Yeah, so, and if somebody is seriously benching those weird early parts, Bristol Ridge, and to some degree Raven Ridge, let me know in the comments and stuff. But that's it. That's the AM4 motherboard roundup. Hopefully that was useful. Next time I'll do AM3, which will be really, really interesting. But yeah, let's go back to regular bench.